Well, I see you have arrived. I admire your courage. And who am I? Just think of me as your very own personal ghost host. I'm here to tuck you in tonight. So, lock your windows and doors, look in your closet and under your bed, and hold your blankets tight, and prepare for 6 terrifyingly true ghost stories. Our first story of the night takes us straight to a haunted house in Houston. We call it the Houston House.
A few years ago, my husband found a 3-bedroom bungalow that was cheap to rent. The owner who inherited it was a friend of my husband. This guy's father had passed away the previous year, and the house was sitting empty that whole time. The owner didn't want to live in it, and he didn't even bother returning to the house to remove all the furniture, clothing, or belongings from it either. I didn't even get a chance to see the place before we moved in. My husband sprung it on me last minute after our apartment lease was up. It looked okay from the outside. The windows were dark, but of course, no one lived there. Once my husband opened the door and switched on the light in the foyer, I felt that this place wasn't empty. I felt like something was in there watching us right away. I knew the original owner passed away, so I just figured that I was just spooking myself that first evening. The whole house was full of furniture, knickknacks, personal items, clothing, and it was dark and dusty. I was depressed looking at it all. The part of the deal for cheap rent was that we had to clean it all. We got a truck and cleaned out the majority of the house. We kept some things like the almost new couch, armchairs, TV, and end tables. We kept the master bedroom furniture in there because the mattress was new, the bedding and furniture was new. It hasn't been used yet. My husband traveled for work. He left me there alone, and that is when I experienced things that were odd. That feeling of being observed didn't go away. I stayed in the front rooms because there was better light there, and it's where our belongings were. The back part of the bungalow was always dark. The first thing I noticed was scratching sounds in the wall. It's Texas, so it could have been any animal doing that. I heard what sounded like walking along the ceiling. I remembered one day I was watching a movie, there was this loud stomping up there. I was distractedly thinking to myself, damn, the neighbors are loud. Then I remembered there wasn't any upstairs neighbors. I ran outside to see what was on the roof. Nothing. It really sounded like heavy footsteps crossing from one side of the house to the other. I was nocturnal back then. I stayed up all night either watching live streams or painting in the living room. I was in my bedroom watching an old black and white movie on TV this particular night. Outside I could see the pink dawn through the curtains. That is when I heard knocking. Just 2 sharp knocks in the upper left side of my bedroom wall over the bed. The bedroom was at the left corner side of the house. I wondered what it was. Then all along that side of the wall was a swooshing sound. I pictured someone using a leafy branch just making swirls with it on the other side. Just a scratchy swirling sound. I hopped out of bed to see what the heck that was. It had to be people. I ran outside and over to the outside of the house, and there was no one. They could have ran away, I guess. It was so odd to me. This happened a few more times before I finally answered that knock with a loud, "Hello?" The knock itself sounded like a person's knock. Intentional to get attention. Not like a tapping or something bouncing off the wall. It was 2 distinct knocks. There was a hesitation, then it knocked 3 times. I asked, "Who's there?" Then the knocking started going hard and fast, it sounded angry and loud. I took off to check the outside again. Nothing. Nobody was there. I went back inside, back to the bedroom. The frantic loud knocking was now accompanied by that swirling sound, and it moved from the left side of the wall to the ceiling. That scared me. I called my friend, and then she told me that I was not supposed to ever answer the knock or go outside, for 2 reasons. If it had been a person scaring me, I could have been hurt. And second, whatever that was, it was bad, and I interacted with it. It went on for nearly 30 minutes. I left the bedroom to go sit shaking in the living room while I chatted with my friend. She wouldn't accept any pictures or videos of it either. After that occurrence, I made sure to ignore all noises. Just act like everything was okay. The activity died down. We painted the back room, but it didn't seem to make it brighter. It stayed gloomy. When we attempted to sleep in the master bedroom, neither one of us could sleep. I was facing the bedroom door, and several times when I woke up that door would be open again. I felt as though someone was staring at us from the kitchen each time. It was also very cold and uncomfortable in there. We moved away after a year.
Now see right there, that should have been your first clue that there was something wrong with your new place. When the owner starts saying, well, I won't set foot into that place, but no, I'm sure it's fine for you. I'm sure you'll love it. That should have been your first indication that you and your husband should have kept looking. I'm just saying is all. Now we're going from Texas to California to a haunted Motel 6. We call this one Experience in a Motel 6 Room.
This happened about 4 to 5 years ago in Fresno, CA. Two friends, M and F, and I checked into a Motel 6 for the night. We had been going through periods of homelessness on and off, sometimes with each other, sometimes not. So when we were able to split the cost of the room 3 ways, we were relieved to shower and rest in peace. Around 12 to 1 a.m., my best friend who wasn't with us called me and asked if I wanted to go to the casino with him. He'd pick me up and throw me 20 to play. I said, hell yeah, and took a shower. I remember while showering, I noticed the top of the shower curtain moving in an odd way, almost like it was being pulled hard in a direction, but it wasn't anything too crazy. I just figured it was the bathroom fan or something. I got ready and said bye to the 2 friends who stayed and left with him. Fast forward to when he dropped me off sometime around 7-8 a.m. I went to the door to the room and knocked. I forgot to grab one of the 2 keys when I left, but no one answered. I knocked again, but nothing. As I turned away from the door to figure out what to do next, I swear on my life I heard my F friend's voice say, 1 minute. But also with a second voice saying the same thing, but in a deep, raspy voice. Imagine a normal and a terrifying voice saying the same thing. Very unhuman-like. I remember thinking what the fudge was that, but just for a second, since I also heard my friend, I wasn't really tripping yet. I scrolled through my phone waiting for 15 to 20 seconds. Then I knocked hard several times more, thinking what the hell is taking them so long to answer the door. After another minute or 2 of waiting, I walked away confused as to where they went. I looked in the parking lot and saw my friend's car that we came in. I walked closer and noticed they both were sitting inside, M in the driver's seat and F in the passenger. I got in and started saying, "What the fudge are you guys?" F cut me off, telling me I wouldn't believe what happened that night after I left. Apparently, after I left, they were chilling watching TV with my male friend seated at the table and my female friend in bed with the covers over her legs. All of a sudden, the covers moved as if someone was tucking her legs into the covers. She screamed and jumped off the bed, freaking out, while my other friend asked what happened. She told him, and while pointing at the bed, they said they both saw the indentation of someone sitting down on the bed. As they both started to freak out, they, keep in mind, this is what they told me as I wasn't there, started to feel an intense feeling of dread and started crying uncontrollably. That's when they both noped the fudge out of there and got into the car where they spent the night. The whole time they're telling me this, I'm half, "That's crazy," and half, "Yeah, right," as I have had previous encounters, but nothing that intense. Right after she finished her story, it dawned on me that I heard her, and some other devilish voice answered my knocking. I damn near crapped my pants, which they both noticed by my facial expression. I told them what happened just a few minutes ago, and we all sat in silence for a good while in disbelief. When we checked out, we counted down 1, 2, 3, and quickly opened the room door, grabbed our stuff we came with, and flew out of there as fast as we could. That's my story. I do have to add that after this happened, I Googled the address the Motel 6 is at, and there had been a grisly double ending sometime in the 80s or 90s. An older couple checked in. I forget if it was a random motel or if it was a Motel 6 by then. Both got into a large container filled with some kind of acid and passed away in what I'm guessing was an extremely painful way. I remember reading that the cleaning lady had to be hospitalized from the fumes from just opening the door and standing at the doorway.
Wow, that does sound like a pretty gruesome way to go indeed. Next, we've got one from a young lady who had her very first experience when she was 6. It's called seeing a ghost.
This happened when I was like 6 years old, but I was sleeping at my grandma's house. She owned an old detached house basically in the middle of nowhere. I was asleep in my room with my parents in a separate room, and I would have already been asleep as it was late at the time. I woke up and in the room there was a large full-length mirror, which was right next to the bed. 6-year-old me looked in the mirror and saw a girl standing there. She looked like your typical Bloody Mary ghost, long black hair over the face and a white dress. She also looked soaking wet. I stared for a while, and I couldn't look away. Thinking deeper into it as I got older, the soaking wet part was so scary as there was a river that ran through my grandparents' garden. I could not move or scream. I remember trying to shout for my mum, but I was paralyzed in fear. However, thankfully my mom ended up coming into the room and started consoling me as I told her what I had saw. Of course, as soon as she entered, the woman in the mirror disappeared and I looked like a crazy child who had a bad dream. My mom then left the room to go back to bed, but I couldn't take my eyes away from the mirror. As soon as she left, the woman in the mirror reappeared, but alongside her was another female apparition. This was weird cause the second female was all blacked out like a shadow, whereas the woman I had initially saw was in full detail. The second woman had an old Victorian style outfit on, puffy dress, and a floral hat from what I could tell by the outline. Eventually, I went back to sleep, and when I woke up I remember not being able to leave my parents' side even though they laughed and made jokes to me trying to wind me up about it and debunk the whole thing. I remember the next morning, there was a basement-type room that had been converted into an office space. The lights were turned on although no one had been there, and when flicking the switch they would not turn off. Eventually they did, which made me even more scared. The main thing I remembered from this experience was that everyone was able to laugh, and I lived my life comfortably knowing that it was just my child imagination, or maybe a one-off sleep paralysis experience. However, as I got older, my mum began to tell stories of when she was younger living in the same house, and how footsteps and door slamming would occur. Really freaked me out and have always been a believer ever since.
Well, it sounds like to me, the ghosts were for your eyes only. Why some ghosts choose to scare kids and not adults is beyond me. I mean, those ghosts will never know the joy of making a big bad 250-pound biker peeing themselves. Before we get into our next tale, I just want to take a moment to remind you to, assuming your hands are not trembling with terror at the moment, hit like and subscribe. It'll really raise our spirits, so to speak. And if you don't, I swear I'll come and haunt your house. I'll rattle chains at all hours of the night, yell boo while you're trying to sleep. I'll raid your fridge, and I'll, try on all your clothes and stuff. Just a lot of scary stuff. Next, we've got one from a dude that is having a lot, and I mean a lot of experiences. We call it Random Confusing Experiences in My Home.
I apologize for the length of this. It's a list of experiences for opinions and or comparable experiences, so it'll be long, but I want it to be detailed. I have lived in a duplex for several years with my grandparents living on the other side, acting as a primary caregiver to them. The house is a little over a century old and had one owner before us. Recently I've been doing some renovations and have started to find some random things buried in the framework of the house behind the plaster walls. I've had some experiences here in the past, very infrequent, and nothing that seemed bad. More weird and random, like cupboards opening, blinds going from closed to open position, sheets peeled down from the bed that weren't before. However, in the last 18 months things have changed. My wife and I recently celebrated our 1-year anniversary. Activity has amped up since we started living together. I'll give examples of some of the more memorable occasions that caught me off guard. It started with small things. Doors opening consistently, hearing things rattle or move in the room next to us, getting calls while I'm working from family asking if I'm home from work early because they're hearing footsteps and furniture slide across the hardwood in my living room and hallways. Recently, it's puzzled me more. One day I came home from work, and as I reached for the handle to the door opened on its own without me touching it. It swung approximately 45 degrees, fairly swiftly, and stopped abruptly. When I stepped inside, I found a Bible face down in the middle of my hallway, just in front of the door. I do have a bookshelf in front of the door that sits ground level and isn't elevated. So I let it go and thought it probably fell off somehow, and maybe the door was slightly ajar. I put the Bible back and have listened ever since to make sure I hear a clear latch when opening and closing all doors. They've continued to open on their own, and I've found the Bible face down in the same spot. The Bible has seemed odd to me because it's several feet away from where I place it. Being it's on ground level and not falling from an elevated place, I can't figure out how to explain the distance it's traveling and how it's placed face down and in the same place each time. Recently, my wife and I were falling asleep, kind of in that in and out stage, not quite completely asleep yet. I heard 3 loud knocks come from inside a walk-in closet in our living room. This is the door I've most often found open. I thought maybe I heard a noise outside or dreamed it and turned and my wife was sitting up beside me and had been woke up by the same sound. I asked her if she heard something. She said it sounded like 3 knocks in the room. I didn't want to state what I heard first and potentially alter what her natural thought or reaction would be. I wanted to get a read on if we both heard the same thing without influence. Since then, we've been hearing the same knocks late at night. Usually comes in 3s and is evenly spaced out. Our dog has recently started to respond to something. He often walks over to the doorway to our living room where this closet is and stares up. He goes into a pointer stance with his tail stiff and straight out, and after some time he will turn and hurry to us and sit between us staring at the doorway with his ears pinned back. Also has started growling and barking at times. Just last week he went to check out a spot and he turned and ran to us, and as he was running a picture came off our wall and landed about 6 feet across the room. There have been a couple times in the last month I've taken the dog on a walk, and when we got home, he refused to go in the front door. He put a paw and then stepped back out, but peeked around the doorway towards our living room and refused to go in. I would have to push him or carry him inside, and when I got in, that same closet door was open. A couple times after walking in, we found items on an end table in that doorway in our floor, placed in the middle of the doorway. I always get her flowers every couple of weeks. We found the vase sitting upright and items that were on the table stacked next to it. Thought that was odd because the dog wasn't there to have knocked anything over as we had him out walking, and I would have expected the vase to be broken or on its side, as it's made of glass, and fell a few feet onto hardwood if that's what happened. We've also taken pictures and videos. Not always to see if we catch something, but have sometimes seen stuff while randomly taking pictures that encourage us to keep seeing if anything weird showed up. On 2 different occasions in the room we experienced most of this activity, we have taken pictures in succession, usually 10 to 12 in a few seconds. Once in a picture with me and another with my niece, we have this random black mass that is over our heads and completely blocks out anything behind it. Not in any of the pictures before or after. My wife and I went to the store one day and were gone for about 3 hours. We left a video camera going in the living room and saw a very clear shadow come out from the direction this closet door is that always opens. It moved slowly from left to right, about 8 feet, then shot back towards the closet. Believe the video where the shadow is present is about 16 seconds. It had a clear shape to it that looked like a head and shoulders with a torso. The rest of the video had nothing visual to see, but at various times you could hear footsteps on the hardwood. I've been trying to figure out why a lot of this seems to have started after my wife moved in with me. I started asking her if she has anything she thought something could be attached to, because she has some things in storage that I've never seen, and I've never felt the need to be intrusive, as it's her personal belongings, and it really doesn't make a difference to me. We both are big on going to estate sales, and she often finds unique things that look aged. She told me she has recently found an antique Ouija board at a home and brought it here and stored it in the closet. We've never used it, and until then I didn't even know it was in my home. I've never had a firm opinion on them and have never had experiences like this, so I'm finding the urge to overreact and trying to treat it more as an opportunity to understand and be open to perspectives and opinions, which is one reason I'm sharing this stuff, to see if anybody might have experienced something similar or had comparable experiences. She has some other things she's collected, like statues that look kind of devilish, or like gargoyles from a home we went to a sale at, and the owners seemed like they were into a lot of dark stuff but had passed away. We both are big into horror movies, so I didn't think much about it beyond she wanted something unique to add to a bookshelf we have where we keep a lot of horror-themed stuff from movies and whatnot. Oddly enough, this bookshelf sits in the doorway, and next to the closet the Ouija board is in is where we've been having the doors opening and the Bibles moving. Same room we've had the masses and shadows and the pictures and video, and where we've heard the knocking. So I'm not sure beyond that. I'm not stating what it is because I don't know. That's just what's been happening. In the last few weeks, her and I have started waking up having nightmares almost nightly, smelling stuff randomly like a rancid smell that moves around. For instance, I smelled it in my living room doorway last week right after the picture flew off towards my dog, but it was gone a few moments later, and we couldn't find a source anywhere in the duplex when we looked around. We often feel now like we are being watched and have seen what looks like shadows moving in the dark, but I can't say for certain what that is. At some point when this happens so much, I have to logically ask myself, what part paranoia plays into it where I'm letting my mind play tricks on me? I try not to go looking for stuff expecting to have an experience. Rather, when something happens at that point, I'll investigate it and see what I can logically disprove. There have been other occasions of things moving we've witnessed, but those have been the primary experiences. The one thing she and I both have experienced we haven't been able to catch on camera yet is this bright light. It's like a little ball of light. We've seen it move around the room, then shoot into a wall or doorway. I know that sounds nuts. Her and I both had seen it independently but never mentioned it because we thought it sounded nuts to say. Until one day it flashed in front of us while we were sitting together. I thought maybe it's a glare of some sort, but it's not against a wall. We've literally seen it move in the middle of the room. That's the one thing I'm most bewildered about, because I can't rationalize it and have no idea what to think of it. I know it's not a random bug or anything. I have no idea what it is, but it's just started being a thing in the last month as this has slowly picked up steam over an 18-month period. Again, sorry for the length of this, for whoever took the time to read. I've always tried to be open-minded to anything without jumping to conclusions, because I want to believe in logical explanations. It's just been odd for this stuff to start happening suddenly when I had lived here for a decade prior with minimal experiences and nothing that seemed scary or made me uncomfortable. I admit recently I've started to become uncomfortable as my wife has become a little freaked out, because I don't want her to feel scared. The knocking in threes and the Bibles being placed weirded me out a bit, along with the video of the shadow. So if anybody has any opinions or experiences, I welcome them. Thanks for taking the time to read, and hope everybody is taking care. Have a good one.
Holy crap, it sounds like you're running the whole gauntlet of paranormal activity. Everything from shadows to ghost farts. Although, I totally agree with you looking for logical explanations first. After all, not every experience is paranormal. That's why it's a good idea to take a line from Sherlock Holmes. When you remove all the other possibilities, then whatever is left, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. Next, we have one from a guy that retells an interesting trip to the woods that he and his mates had when they were kids. It's entitled, My First Ghost Encounter. . 'It
When I was about 7 to 8 years old, I lived near a woods called Linford Woods, and my brothers and friends played there many times. We used to make rope swings from trees that were at the side of a World War II bomb crater, but one day me, my older brother and my best friend at the time were there as usual, at one weekend, and this particular day we could hear flute music playing, and it seemed to be coming from all around us. We searched all over to find the source, but we gave up when it eventually stopped, and we decided to head home as it was close for us to be home for tea. So we started to head for home, and then the music started again, but again we couldn't determine its source. We made it to the edge of the woods and had to climb a small fence that opened up to a large field, and in the middle of that field we could see a man sat cross-legged playing the flute. We approached him and told him that we could hear him from miles away. From my first impression, he looked out of place. His clothes didn't match the era, which at the time was the late 80s. He looked like he was from the 60s or 70s, his clothes did not look like anything you would see anybody wearing at that time. We asked him if he could play any other instruments, and he said he could play the guitar. We asked him if he could play any songs that we knew at the time was George Michael, but he said he'd never heard of him. We asked other questions, but my older brother said it was time for us to go home. We all started running across the field, which led to a tree line which we had to go through that led us to a dirt road. It took us no more than 30 seconds to get there. Then as we were running down the dirt road we could hear the flute playing again, and as we are still running we looked to our left back towards where the man was. We could see him running parallel to us on the field but through the tree line. Then as we were still running we looked away from him to look forward, which was milliseconds, and about 100 meters away we saw him jumping down a sewage manhole. It took us about 20 seconds to reach it, and when we got there, there was no cover over the manhole and all we could see was rushing water, but the hole seemed too small for a man to fit through. We all thought it was weird, but at the time we were young and naive and thought older people were stronger and faster and could do things that kids couldn't. The following Monday we went to school, and we were telling friends about what we had witnessed, and a lunch lady overheard us and asked us to describe him, and she asked us if we had made the story up, and we said no, and she told us that he fits the description of a 23-year-old man that had offed himself in the woods in the 70s, and he had offed himself from one of the trees. And when I think back I remember his neck looked very red and sore. We never heard or saw anything again, but I'm 43, as is my friend, and my older brother is 45, and we all remember it the same. And my older brother is the type that believes in fact and figures and what you can see, and he can only explain it as supernatural.
Sure, go to the woods, have a few laughs. You know that's the problem with kids. It's all fun and games until you see a ghost. But on the other hand, at least this ghost played some music that you could pee your pants by. Now, our last one of the night. You know how everybody sometimes complains about their job? Well, this person has a pretty solid reason to. It's called, I worked at a haunted hospital.
Let's start with some background. I have worked for 1.5 years at the hospital as a service assistant. I've worked DS, day shift, 6 a.m. 2 p.m., ES, evening shift, 2 p.m. 9 p.m., and NS, night shift, 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. During the DS, we are around 50 to 90 in the service department. During ES, there are about 15 people, of which 10 are responsible for cooking from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., and during NS, there are only 2 of us. It's no secret that you experience the most during the late evening and early morning hours, and oh my, I've seen a lot during the 1.5 years I've worked there. There are particularly 2 departments known to be haunted, Department 12-3 and Department 28-1. Both are outpatient departments, which means they are cleaned either in the evening or at night, and that's also where the most happens. Department 12-3, when I had just started, I had an evening shift/training shift with Morton. It was my 3rd shift, so we decided to split up. Morton took the active, 24-hour departments, as those are the busiest, and I was assigned 3 sleeping outpatient departments, as well as 1 closed department, which had been shut down because many patients became drastically and quickly more seriously ill. We call it Department 12-3. Morton told me to remember that, no matter what. Here's a quote from him. If you hear something on 12/3, no you didn't. If you smell something on 12/3, no you didn't. If you see something on 12/3, no you didn't. If you hear someone, whether you know the voice or not, calling you, no you didn't. Leave the department immediately. Don't look back and stay calm. Go in the opposite direction of the voice. Of course, this was very unsettling to hear when I had to go up to that very department alone. After cleaning half of the department, I suddenly heard a knocking sound from one of the rooms, but kept working without reacting because if you hear something, no you didn't. As I was finishing 4 rooms, I suddenly heard Morton calling me and saying he needed my help in Department 14-2. I remembered what he had said, stayed calm, and left the department quietly, taking the elevator down to the 2nd floor. I paged Morton, which we always use to contact each other during a shift, and asked if he had been to 12/3 and called me, and also asked if he needed help in 14-2. Morton was silent for a while and then said, "If I needed help, I would have paged you. You didn't respond, right?" Morton sounded really concerned, but I reassured him that I hadn't answered and had just left the department quietly, putting my cleaning cart in place so everything seemed normal. Morton replied that he was glad to hear that and said we were done with 12/3 for the night. We'll report to DV that we missed 4 rooms. To this day, I still don't know what's up with 12/3. I just know I've experienced it many times since during evening and night shifts, and I will never go back there, either as staff or a patient. Department 12-4. On the same evening as the previous story, I had to clean in Department 12-4, which is the department just across from 12-3. This department is special. Here, the service staff must also check the surveillance footage during the afternoon and evening hours. While I was sitting and checking the surveillance, I got chills running down my spine. I jokingly filmed the screen of the surveillance system, as it's quite unnerving to sit alone in a closed department and watch the footage. To my great shock, I saw someone walking around in the waiting room on the footage. I even caught it on video, but the quality of my video was blurry in the seconds leading up to and during the moment the person was walking around. Department 28-1. Another evening, when I was on the evening shift, I had to clean in 28-1, which is another department known for being extremely haunted. It's a department where, even during the day, staff feel uneasy being there. It's a locked department after 3 p.m., and unlike other outpatient departments, you need both a key card and a code to get in. There's no medicine or anything valuable there, but it's a department that no one wants to be in. Extra security has been added because the door has often opened by itself when patients or staff have walked past. Even though the door was locked, I had to go in and clean, unlocking the door with both the key card and code. What's special about outpatient departments is that you don't turn on the lights when you clean in the evening, to avoid patients thinking the department is open and wandering in. Anyway, I was in my own world cleaning when, during our evening shifts, we are allowed to listen to music through headphones, which I was doing this evening. There's a room, room 11, that never gets cleaned. No matter how many times you go in to clean, the door always gets locked again. It sounds like things are being knocked over and thrown around inside. When you open the door again, there's paper trash and all sorts of other things scattered all over the room. It's just a room you don't want to be in because there's an incredibly uncomfortable feeling and you feel like you're being watched. Additionally, you hear strange sounds throughout the department, like footsteps running down the hallway, things being thrown, knocking on doors and windows, and generally feeling watched throughout the department. I can't fully explain what's going on in the department, but it's not a nice place to be, and we all agree on that. Also, there's an elevator door leading into it, which can only be opened after 3 p.m. with both a code and keycard. The service department's office is 2 floors above 28-1, so you often take the elevator down from the office and up to the office. One night when I was about to start my night shift, I went up to clock in on the schedule, then took the elevator down to the ground floor. The door normally opens outward to the main hallway, but this night it also opened inward to 28-1, and I heard a voice saying, "Come right in," The door to the hallway wouldn't open, and I kept pressing to open it until the door to 28-1 closed and the door to the hallway opened.
Geez, I thought y'all was supposed to keep patients nice and calm in a hospital. But how the hell are you supposed to do that if the joint is haunted? Wait, I got it. If a patient says they saw a ghost, just say no you didn't. If they say they heard something weird, just say no you didn't. If they say they smell something odd, just say no you didn't. That was some scary stuff tonight, wasn't it? But do you know what is not scary? Hitting like, subscribe, and sharing this video. It'll really help us keep the ghosts at bay. However, if you prefer podcast, then you're in luck, because we also release our videos in podcast form on Spotify. And of course, if any of you have a story to share, then by all means, drop me a line in the comments. But I do want to thank you for stopping by, and I hope the stories we told won't be giving you too many bad dreams. But if they do, then maybe you shouldn't run from them. After all, sometimes it's better to embrace your nightmares.